I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.
Welcome to Cookies, the world's most influential basketball podcast. I am Ben Dietrich. Jordan Rodelli is on vacation. And Andrew Kuo, you already know. He doesn't take days off. Mr. Kuo, how are you, buddy?
I'm amazing. I'm like a psych chirping bird in the corner of the Cookies cabana. I'm always here, man. Excited to pod about the easy breezy current events that are transpiring in our world.
You definitely didn't plan that phraseology. You did that on the fly.
That's right.
Like, because, you know, you probably wouldn't come up with "I'm a chirping bird in the corner."
No.
No offense. It was fine. I mean, you were going by the seat of your pants.
It's a low level. It's a low level cipher, pretty much.
Yeah. That was Tyler Johnson bars right there. I'm a chirping bird in the corner.
Listen, I don't have like a cheat sheet of my rhymes when I go on the radio. It's like I rap about what I see and hear, and it just happens to be a little bird in the corner, man.
I'm at my desk like a printer, in the corner like a bike.
Yo, I'm gonna shut down like my laptop.
Well, anyway, you have bars.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
So, the overwhelming story in America, we can dispense with the small talk, as great as it was, as lyrical as it was, are the protests that have sprung up throughout America following the murder of George Floyd by police officers in Minneapolis. And now there has been civil unrest in Minneapolis for several nights. Now it has grown in places like Louisville, Oakland, Brooklyn, Los Angeles. I'm sure there's ones I'm forgetting. But nationwide.
DC.
We now have strife. And it's I don't know the best way to start other than to say this was coming, right?
Yeah, I think this is an expression of a feeling that had been bubbling for months and years and maybe even generations. And it is an expression of the way a lot of people feel about a lot of things. And we're going to get into it, but I think overall we're seeing a statement towards, I believe, a systemic issue, and at the tip of that peak is Donald Trump in the White House. And our country has been waiting to discuss this, and that discussion takes many forms. And this week it took the form of tragedy caught on tape, the murder of a man in plain sight, and then the community's reacting in anger about a lot of things.
Well, I think we have seen the same kind of response to police violence in Ferguson and other places over the last few years. That is not totally unique. I do think what is a bit different now is a seething anger at the state of America, and this being evidence of not only what has happened in the past, but a flashpoint where people are really mad. And we've seen during COVID the utter betrayal of the American people by its government in every way. And there was a lot of resentment. And we also know that COVID disproportionately affected Black people and Latino people. So these things coupled together with a brutal murder captured on film have created a situation where people need to express rage and do not believe that the system works on any level.
Yeah. And, you know, there is that idea that everything is okay until you deprive someone of 4 meals and then society will break down. And we're almost at like missing meal number 3, right? And I think this what we're seeing now is definitely an acute result of coronavirus and the mishandling of our policy during the last 3 months. And I don't think we have expressed that clearly enough in the media. This was mishandled. Too many people died, and too many people were put in positions of peril financially.
Exactly. We're talking about obscene amounts of unemployment, but also abject, almost a punitive approach by the government towards the people of America. Oh, you're having hard times? Screw you. Get back to work.
It's like maybe you should have prepared, like, and the cruelty and I think disregard for the human experience in our country has been something that's why I say generational. I mean, this can go back as far as we want it to like the years our country was founded.
I mean, it goes back to literally the moment our country was founded and before our country was actually in existence.
Yes. This is the story of our country. Like, we always talk about basketball terms, and certain organizations have underlying themes. Our country is about inequity and class bias and racism. And I think the way this country was founded brings us all the way up to 2020. And I think this country is not that old. We are not far from the descendants of people who were treated in the worst way, and I think that is palpable when something like this happens in our cities.
Well, I mean, you have a country that has it could be considered a failed state in many ways. It is a deeply cruel and inhumane country in
some ways.
In most ways. Like in most ways, it is a failed state. And that applies to the Democratic Party and the Republican Party in terms of the pillars of those groups are not based on helping America. You look at both of them they don't give you health care. They are militaristic. They are in favor of a draconian police state. And it's not like that's on one side of the aisle. It's both.
Yeah.
It's both.
Yeah.
And you look at a country that keeps stomping down on people who are poor, and particularly black people, and there is no accountability. Yeah. There seems to be no way that this can be fixed in our lifetime unless something dramatically changes, and that might include burning down a police precinct.
Yeah, I mean, just to backtrack a second, like, I hear you, and this is the dumbest. Well, I say that every show. Like, this is the dumbest thing I'll say this show. The dumbest thing I'll say this show is, I really love this country, and I think government is hard, and that sounds so stupid. But throughout world history, there is no perfect way to do this, and by all means, America has not done this perfectly. Probably less perfect than perfect. But I do love this country, and there's ideas in it that my parents loved, and they came over from China. And when they raised me, they were like, this place is awesome. Okay, don't talk to cops. Taxes are weird. Just pay them. Republicans are really scary. This was like when I was a kid. And they were still like, this country is awesome, and we do not regret raising you here for a second. So that's my bias, There's certain freedoms here that allows us to do a podcast and open a shop, and our friends to open businesses. And while that may be very difficult, and especially in a post or current COVID environment, I think I think this is an ongoing thing, and I think being a human is flawed, right? Like, the power structure of a society will never work perfectly, especially when we don't have the power.
I would say it's true that any society has some problems, but the ones in America have grown exponentially worse across the board. They've always been terrible in certain ways. New York, America was built on slavery. It was built on the genocide of Native Americans. Like, it is a bloodthirsty, evil place since its inception. And we can paper over that with ideas about equality and land of opportunity and come here and live the American dream. But it is fundamentally a racist state. It is not a place where there are racists. It is a racist country through and through. And that's why we seem to have these incredible problems that don't exist other places. And, the Times had they don't exist other places in the same way.
I mean,
look at states like South Africa or Australia. They are our ilk. Places with horrible, like racial injustices. Apartheid states. That's what America is.
Yeah, I think taking land away from Native Americans
wasn't just taking land, it was slaughtering them.
Yeah, and systemically suppressing them for generations. I think
to this day.
Yeah, for sure, to this day with COVID and the policy regarding COVID.
Putting them on like the worst farming soil in America.
And then taking it back if we can use it again, But I think it was, the conception of this country was deeply, deeply flawed, for sure.
I don't know if I'm saying, I don't know if conceptually it was wrong, but like it has always...
It was wrong.
It has always been an incredibly brutal and bloodthirsty place. I mean, look at like the lore of America. It's cowboys, it's Indians. I mean, I'm saying that is like cowboys and Indians, but it's, Hollywood, it's brutal cops. America's whole thing is like romanticizing violence.
And also, to contrast that, the people who came here first were Puritans, and they believed in a belief system that seems very antithetical to the thing that you're talking about. Because, if you're righteous, you don't do these things. But
they fucking suck too, though.
I do not enjoy it, but it is deeply, it's in our Constitution. It's the way we talk about our social behavior, it's still there. It's a police state, right? It's constantly like, don't do that in the eyes of God. That's not good. Don't do that.
You're right. It's a conservative, it's the Utah Jazz of nations in many ways. It's a police state. Look at how we treat our citizens. Look at how long we put them in prison for. Our incarceration rates are at the top of any nation other than Russia. I mean, we might be higher than Russia, but among what we consider developed nations, we are obscene in our draconian justice.
Yeah, look at the way we talked about COVID and behavior. It was a struggle because everyone was policing everybody, and the shocking. The interesting thing, I think, watching all these, like I was up all night watching all these feeds and seeing what was happening, was every single person in these groups and mobs and riots think they're correct. And to me, that was a very hard thing to wrap my head around. If you pulled any single person, a person who throws a brick through a window, a cop, a kid dressed up as riot police, they would all tell you they're doing the right thing.
For sure.
And I don't know how to talk about that, right? I don't think many of them are doing the right thing, but they all believe that they are. And this is like this COVID behavior where it's like, I am doing the right thing. Let me tell you what I'm doing so you can do what I do. And society kind of behaves this way, and it's scary.
So I have a question for you on this exact topic.
Go for it.
So fascism can't take root unless there are people who like fascism. Mm-hmm. And that's one thing you realize going from people who voted for Trump to YouTube comments to people on Twitter, whatever, that there is a significant population within the United States that enjoys fascism. They wouldn't call themselves fascist, to your point that you're making right now.
Right.
They would say, no, I'm a freedom fighter.
Yes.
But they are fascists. They want a fascist government. Why does America, which has ostensibly been, rooted in the idea of individual responsibility and bootstraps and this mythos of the rugged individual. Why are there so many fascists here?
This is a weird idea, and I'm not an expert in this by any means or in anything, but immediately when you bring up that question, I think of technology and I think of bots, right? And I think fascism has a romantic allure to it because it feels dangerous to some people, not myself, but like I understand why it's kind of a unifying thought if it functions at its most efficient. And I think of technology because there will, like the idea of a troll has been around forever, but the idea of executing how trolls behave on social media, let's say just Twitter, can really influence the way we think about things. And I think the voice of fascism on social media is seductive. And I think technology, specifically social media, has influenced what we're seeing today in a bigger way than, say, like Tiananmen Square, because it has unified people to a singular thought, and you can find whatever thought you're looking for if you just search for it.
See, I'm not talking exactly about the alt-right or something like that, like the Boogaloo Boys or whoever. I'm thinking more about, I think it has to do with white people's idea that the United States is a white nation and it serves their interests. And if you are trying to shake that up, whether it's via politics or being of a different race, then fascism is applied to you. To me, that's the kind of America's all about rugged individualism. If it's your own version of it, like I'm the one who can be the cowboy. I can do what I want. If other people are like, hey, that's not cool, it's like crack down on this guy.
Yeah.
Drive your car through traffic if there's people protesting, because you can get to where you want to go in your car. You don't have to stand there as they protest. Bring out the hoses, bring out the dogs, send in the National Guard, bring in the military police, shoot the looters, because that's not America.
Yeah. I think of psychics, right, and the simple psychology they use, like, come over here, I'll read your palm. And it's like, they just, can size you up and be like, you're happy at your job, but I feel like you're underappreciated. And you're like, yes. Mm-hmm. It's like, I think you're capable of more. You have achieved quite a lot in your life, but there's more out there for you. Like, yes. And I think that plays into political movement and rioting, right? Like, to your point, it's like I kind of lost my train of thought because I'm thinking of psychics. I miss those times, but people sitting outside their weird stores. But I think you're right. So if everyone thinks they're right in a jumbled political statement, like if you look on,
but everyone always thinks they're right.
Yes, right.
Like that's not even just about politics or about these issues. Like, all right, let's talk about the Knicks. Someone's like, all right, I'm wrong. So, look, I think they should build around Portis, but I'm wrong. But I think they should do that. Like, no one does that. They're like, no, look, I know what I'm saying. Build around Bobby Portis.
Ben,
more Portises.
Don't give away the cookie's special sauce, man.
Knowing that we're wrong all the time.
I mean, I've never been wrong. I don't know about you. Maybe, who knows?
I can't
always
say
right.
I've been wrong. No.
But I think, I think the feeling that people can change any narrative to suit their own is a powerful one, and you can find support for that in an idea like fascism or whatever. And stop me if I'm not really talking about what you're talking about.
I'm more saying the sort of hypocrisy of a nation that is so prideful of the idea of rugged individualism and freedom loves fascism, or at least a significant part of the population is all about fascism and cracking down on people and, not allowing people to disagree, not allowing people to march, not allowing people to protest.
Or not allowing people to govern, right? Like, this revolution is our brand. Like the Knicks are enforcers, the Lakers are pretty, the Boston are leprechauns. America are revolutionaries, right?
But I think it's only a name. That's kind of my thing, right?
I agree. I agree.
feel like we sit here and say we love revolution, we love individuals, and we're not. It's a lie. We're not like that at all. We don't like protesting in the streets, a la the French. We don't like that. We don't like that shit at all.
But revolution is kind of scary, right? Like everyone thinks revolution is great because it's romantic, and we see that woman in the French painting of the woman pumping her fist, with a flag, and it's awesome until it's just like, so what's a revolution going to look like? It's like people like me are going to take over. I'm like, how about people like you aren't going to take over? That might be the revolution. It's like, ooh, that doesn't sound as nice. I'm like, it never is, man.
I think Americans talk a big game, but are generally very timid. I think they are content. We have never had war on our own soil since the Civil War. Look at how we overreacted to 9/11. Like, with all due respect to those who died, we freaked the fuck out. We used it to invade and cause regime change in Iraq, which
Wrong
had nothing
country.
to do with it. Like we were a bear that got stung on the ass and just started flailing around and ripping apart the foliage.
Or we were the bear that got stung in the ass and be like, this is our chance to get some honey. Let's
For
get
sure.
the honey.
You are correct on that. But I'm just saying, Americans like to talk about being tough. We like to march up to the courthouse with our Hawaiian shirt and our AR.
But no,
and our
bros.
bushy beard and sit there and pretend to like cosplay freedom fighters. But we're not. Americans are not. Americans are timid. Americans don't protest. We don't get shit from our government. We don't do anything.
Yeah.
So then you see, as what's happened over the last few days, this total overreaction to property crime.
Yeah.
The grim specter of a burning national chain store.
Well, I maybe I'm halfway on this because I'm with Killer Mike on this, right? Like the rapper Killer Mike got on TV and it kind of went viral, and he was like, if we destroy where we live in Atlanta, what do we have? And when I say I really love this country, I especially love New York City. And like a burning cop van in the middle of the street, yeah, do it. I think that's symbolically powerful. No one seriously got hurt. That's a van that costs like $40,000, whatever, like burn it. But watching businesses burn down makes me sad. And
We have not seen that many businesses burn down that are not things like a Target or an Arby's.
it's called Target. It's amazing. But like
It's called roast beef, Arby's. Burn it.
it's called throw a big brick through my window and things. But I mean, I love the image of people protecting Waffle House because it's something people love, and they in New York City gathered in front of Barclays Center, and this is a basketball podcast, and it made me think of like, I really love basketball. I hope they don't burn down Barclays. Because I thought that would be a real shame, and I would take no joy in that. Please don't burn.
They've got to play at LIU now?
They got to play in Westchester County Center. But you know what I mean? Like these, of course, Barclays is a fucking bank, and if you dig deep enough, like these are places that we have many, many issues with. But I think seeing the destruction kind of bums me out, man.
I hear Killer Mike, and Atlanta has a little bit of a difference in some ways than, say, Minneapolis. Because
Definitely.
When we're talking about the destruction of chain stores, especially Target works with the cops. Target has a working relationship with the police in Minneapolis to provide surveillance. And they, in return, ask for heavy prosecution of shoplifting. So, like, Target deserves to burn and be looted. Like,
I don't know. I would
100%.
disagree. They deserve many things, but like I don't think. I mean, this is an expression of anger that needs to happen.
I'm saying I'm 100% fine with Target being burned and looted. Who freaking cares about Target? I am also with you on that. This is just an expression of anger. This is an expression of saying, I'm fed up and nothing else works. So if a small business gets burned, I wish it didn't, but that's how it goes, right? Like, that's the deal here. This is not a strategized outcry. This is not something that was a PowerPoint presentation. This is spontaneous, and there's collateral damage. And it's sad. If you have a little restaurant and it got burned, you know, you saw it went viral yesterday. There was I believe it was an Indian restaurant in Minnesota, and they're like, let it burn.
The owners said, let it burn. Yeah.
But overall, it has not been small places that have been targeted. And that idea that you're burning down your own neighborhood, Target's not your neighborhood. That's not a community. That's a store. It's a chain store.
Yeah.
That's not that's not a neighborhood. Arby's is not a neighborhood. Not a neighborhood.
I would be the chain store apologist here because people work there and those are like franchise businesses and
bad jobs.
They're not great, but you know, like minorities own those places as franchises. So like
maybe, but like they're bad jobs. They're not part of the community. They are I just can't sit there and look at Arby's and say, oh, not an Arby's. That was a pillar.
I mean, this is a subjective thing because we don't shop at Target and we don't eat at Arby's, right? And a lot of people who don't like basketball being like, burn Barclays down. Fuck it, you know? And I'm like, well, we really love that. But I hear you. Like, of course, like, bootstrap time, like, individual minority owners of Indian restaurants get more sympathy because of that. But that same person does work at that Target, you know?
Well, you know, what we've seen over the last couple days is, you know, where's the line that gets drawn where people start siding against the protesters.
It's happening. I mean, you see the media trying to... as a community, we're trying to figure this out. How many of these are undercovers? The search for undercover cops has been a relief and a joy during all of this. It's like spot the signs. So it's like backwards Yankees cap,
but
tactical
people are doing this wrong,
sunglasses.
It's the wrist. It's the armband or a bandana.
The white armband, but now they've been taking them off because it's been sussed out, right?
Right. So they'll switch to like holding a newspaper, or they'll switch to a bandana. They'll switch to a color. That's how.
It's
that
like
NYPD
switching
always
baseball
does it.
sets. I'm just like
it's always colors, armbands, and like bandanas and stuff.
I'm like, look for the white weightlifter, and you found them. If the guy is like buff, like protein shake buff and white, I'm like, it's probably a cop, man.
I mean, you're right.
It's like you can't take off a bandana on pectoral muscles, you know. But and a lot of these people are anarchists, and
Who's leeching creatine? Who is it?
Who's got that gym membership energy? Who wants to build mass? Cops.
Who's out here looking at this as a rep?
Yeah. I mean, you look at Luka Doncic's doughy ass, and you'd be like, not a cop. And then you look at chiseled Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell. You're like, cop ass behavior, man.
Derek Favors, retired cop.
Can I just like pull the curtain aside for a second? I feel bad calling Mitchell a cop now because cops are truly, truly despicable, and Donovan Mitchell is like a troll. That's different, right?
Well, let's clarify. We don't really think the Utah Jazz are cops in the way that literally. They are cops in the way that
the interns. Yeah.
No, I'm saying in the way that, say, someone takes a photo of people not social distancing. That's a cop.
That's cop-ass behavior.
They're not an actual living, breathing cop. Like, that's a totally different species.
Totally, and we don't have those in the NBA on the court, as far as I can tell.
Why won't they give Spencer Hawes a platform?
Spencer Hawes-ass cop. Yeah, who's buff enough to be a cop in the NBA?
Karl Malone is a king cop.
He could be, but he's not white.
He's also a sexual predator.
Karl Malone is a complicated man. Anyway, so like in these riots, we're seeing now, like to your point about the anarchist thing, like people can like interject their meaning into these images, and like maybe that's not your point. I'm sorry, but
well, what I was going to say was that after the death of George Floyd, everyone understood why there were protesters. Even, the fascists among us were like, well, okay, that killing was kind of crazy. You can't really side with the cops on this one. They're just waiting for like the tipping point. Like, when can they do it? It was like, for some, Target. That Target was someone's son. Like,
Dude, they were coworkers, which is the weirdest development.
there's a lot of shit there that we probably don't know.
And this is not going to be good. We're going to find out stuff that will not make us happy.
Maybe. Or maybe it makes us very happy.
Depending on what makes you happy. And
right, I'm saying, well, who knows?
Yeah.
But what I was saying was that for some people, the burning of Target and the looting of Target was the drawing line. Okay, I'm against the protesters now. And that line, if you were Charlie Kirk or some, like alt-right fascist, was quick.
Oh, they're ready for the mechanism.
They're ready. They're just waiting for like that moment where they can be like, the destruction of property.
The drafts in the tweet.
You hate to see it.
The tweet drafts have been made. Yeah.
And for other people, it was the burning of the precinct. For other people,
CNN.
Exactly. So people are just waiting for their line to get crossed.
Yeah.
Personally, my line is really, really far away. Just personally speaking. I don't care if they burn down Barclays Center. I don't care. That doesn't mean that I want them to do it. But I'm like, my line just keeps going. I just like, look, if this is protesting and this is what's happening, then like I support the protesters.
My line is really quick. It's as soon as a person dies as a result of this. That is just my.
But people have already been probably shot by cops.
Yes, and they've been close to dying, and that's just my line. So I was fed up with this an hour, like 2.
But so I don't have a problem with the protesters though, because this is the cops starting the violence. So I don't know. As I said, my line is just really, really far away. I'm not rooting for anything in particular. I'm just saying I will side with the protesters almost no matter what.
Yeah, I think you side with players over, we side over players over management as an American thing. We side with protesters over the cops as an American thing.
Right. If it was like the protesters have now burned down a hospital, I'd be like, okay, all right, guys, no, not the hospital. That was uncouth.
Right.
But that's not what's happening though.
Yeah.
And just to kind of go back to your point before, what's interesting is that you have more sort of conservative and I don't mean this in the way of like politically conservative, but you have people who want this to be a peaceful protest, kind of the Killer Mike idea. Like, let's keep this under control.
Martin Luther King.
Peaceful protests,
yep.
etc. Right? And then you have people from that group saying, well, we're having white kids coming in from the suburbs. They're not from here, and they're causing the damage. Then you have some people saying it's the cops who are breaking windows. It's the cops who are starting fires. And there was that one that was seemingly exposed in Minnesota.
Tapping windows and smashing them.
For smashing stuff. And then he was...
Pizza Bully, or the Pizza Bully 2, confronting him.
Yeah, and people allegedly identifying him as a cop who was actually doing agent provocateur activities. So you have all these different dynamics, and then you look at videos, and it's mostly young people.
Yeah.
Who are caught up in the moment, and the ones who are chasing off the cops and throwing stuff at the cars. It just looks like a lot of young people. So you kind of have competing visions for what this is supposed to be like, which is totally natural.
Mm-hmm. Protest
which I
is
get.
A young idea, yeah. And, this is COVID related, but this was also happening years in the making where, and we've talked about this endlessly, young people will always have this energy, and where that goes, it could be West Coast, East Coast rap battles or rap debates. It could be protesting the Vietnam War. In our generation, like, the identity of being a young person kind of sides with your political identity now. And this is an articulation of how I think, like, the next generation of thoughtful minds are like experiencing their environment. Protest is huge. I remember when everyone was rushing to JFK and LaGuardia, or one or the other, to protest Trump and his travel ban and his immigration policy, and it felt like a really romantic, youthful thing to rush out there and be with people who thought like you, who looked like you, and to express a really important thought in your life. And like, I can't speak for you, but I was not compelled to rush to Barclays. But like, I don't consider myself young like that anymore, you know? And I think this kind of is, this is a container for something that needs to go somewhere. And I think being compelled to go out there is a real feeling, and it may not be attached to an ideology. Do you know what I mean?
I regret not being there yesterday because I think it is really important for people to go to the streets, because sitting at home and watching this unfold, I donated money like so many other people did to, funds to bail people out in Minnesota. But yeah, I felt as if I had sort of let people down by not going there yesterday. And I've gone to a lot of protests, a lot.
Were you at Occupy?
I went down there, but that wasn't my thing, though. I was at a lot of the anti-war ones right after 9/11. Like we went to a lot.
Protest works. I'm into it. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, they work. And you look at why a place like France has universal health care and has these protections for people and workers. It's because they just roll out in the street. Maybe they do it too much, but they just take to the streets like, nah, fuck that. We're going out. America doesn't like doing that. And you see like how it's de-incentivized in America by police violence, but you still have to go, because the video of that muscular brolic creatine repping ass cop pushing that woman and throwing her to the ground and her head hitting the curb, that's powerful.
Yep.
Like we saw this happen in the South coming out of, civil rights movement, that police brutality caught on camera, it shows people what's happening. And cops are violent, and cops don't work for the people. And the more footage you get of cops doing that, the more chances we will have of change. You can't just let the cops stand there. And like de Blasio, get the fuck out of here, dude.
I don't love him, man.
There's going to be a protest at Barclays Center. There's like hundreds of cops waiting. Why were they there?
I know.
Why? People weren't going to burn down Barclays Center. They were just going to protest. The cops were there. Why would you do that? And we talked about this before, de Blasio's cowardly ass. How he talked about stop and frisk during his campaign when he got elected. They turned their backs on him at a funeral. They, get their little lackeys at Daily News and New York Post, which are both cop-loving publications. All of a sudden, he doesn't check them at all. Their budget's inflated. Crazy inflations as crime drops.
Yeah.
Hiring all these cops, giving them all this overtime, giving them all this equipment and guns and militarization. For what? New York is like the safest big city in the world. And yet our police force keeps growing? That's on de Blasio. He's a coward.
I mean,
He won't even shoot a 3.
A statistics person would say there's a correlation, right? The more money you put into police aid, the less.
No.
I mean, the data is so hazy, right? But I'm
saying no. There is no data that says the more cops we're getting, the safer we are. It's not.
I mean, the data sucks, and I don't stand by this, but the number of unarmed deaths from cops is always the highest for every race, but it's going down all over the country, and that's really hard to figure out. The first thing you think was like, well, how gray is this data?
Well, there is no nationalized data for cop murders.
There was, and the New York Times published it, but again, it's hazy. They published it nationwide in 2019. It has been going down. There's numbers that were published, and
I mean, the estimation is that there is a 30% chance that if you were killed by a stranger, you were killed by a cop.
I mean, this is all very vague stuff, right? Like,
I'm saying that's like the best estimate we have. That 30% of stranger deaths are killings by cop. And that there's somewhere between 1,100 and 1,500 per year.
Yeah, and I mean, I think of Tiananmen Square quite a bit because it was a huge turning point in my young life. as a kid, and watching that go down, watching the hope get dashed so quickly in real time was shocking to me, and it really like it was a real formative experience for me, especially with my parents being involved in politics, and I mean, they weren't politicians, but they wrote about it, and they were very busy during that time, and watching a military state squash something that I thought was so beautiful was really shocking, and I think it changed the world, the world forever, and the way we do this. And in China's point of view, it was a smash hit. They squashed it. They didn't get any sort of like real retaliation from the rest of the world, and they got to do their shit, and they're still doing their shit. And they got rich and powerful and all these things decades after. And we don't want this in America. I'm sure of it. We don't want this in the world. I'm positive of it. I don't have an answer here, though, because that government, as an identity, thinks they're right. So this goes back to my whole point. They think they're doing the best by their people. We know they weren't, I think. And they're trying to do, like, Donald Trump thinks he is helping people. We know he's not, but he thinks he is.
I don't think that's necessarily true about him, but he is a uniquely demented person.
Yeah.
I don't think he follows any sort of orthodoxy at all other than self-interest. You know, like, I think you could say George Bush thinks he's helping the people that he wants to help. Yeah. I don't think Trump feels that way at all. I just don't think his brain, his little reptile peanut, actually calculates life in those terms.
I think he's one of the dumbest public people I've ever seen in my life, if not the dumbest with the most power. I can't tell, but like,
he's clearly the dumbest with the most power in American history by far.
Possibly world history.
I mean, right, when you put those two vectors of dumbness and power, he's the head of the most powerful nation in the history of the world, and he's arguably the stupidest person you've ever met.
Even
like, I've never met anyone stupider than him.
Like, I always do this.
I've met dumb people. I pod with you, Quo. Sorry.
Present company included. Yeah. I mean, would you trust him to organize a birthday party? Would you trust him to get tickets to a game? Would you trust him to water your plants? I'm not sure of any of these things.
Could you have him explain to you, like, literally anything? How does the post office work? Yeah. Like, Donald, explain how to poach an egg. It's like, whoa.
Litigate. Litigation. But his genius is in probably Stephen Miller's kind of genius, which is dastardly. I don't believe Trump is writing his own tweets. Trump is not smart enough to use this language. It's mostly Stephen Miller, right?
There is no way that phrase, looting and shooting, did not come directly from Stephen Miller, who is referencing a segregationist. Right. And then Trump didn't know it. And when Trump got checked on it, he had to walk it back in this incredibly like babyish way. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing about him, is like, he's fundamentally a total just infant. You know, he's a bully, but he's not a tough guy.
Yeah. And
all the, I'm just saying globally, right? Putin or in North Korea, Trump kowtows to those guys immediately. He's a punk. And he ran away from what was supposed to be a press conference yesterday because he didn't want to answer questions. He walked back that tweet. He doesn't really want that smoke.
Nope.
I don't know with who, but just generally speaking.
Well, this is my hottest take. I think I'm lacking here with the riots and the whole movement of BLM and Occupy and even fascism, or even Antifa, is a voice, a leadership. And this has been the criticism a lot of these movements, because they are grassroots. They start on social media and they live on social media, but there is no unifying person to articulate. Like, we've had Pete Buttigieg swing and miss. We've had Joe Biden swing and miss. We've had Bernie do well, but it's not really gravitating, as he's not the voice of this riot. And I'm missing that. Someone to articulate all these thoughts and feelings we have in not a perfect way, but in a singular way. And my hot take is the only leader in America right now is Donald fucking Trump, because MAGA people can look to him or Stephen Miller for guidance. And if you are someone who feels oppressed, as you should, and if you want to throw a brick through a window, as you should, after all of this, is there anybody to articulate the way you feel?
You know, it's interesting because a lot of the guys who came out of Ferguson with a voice ended up sort of fading away for various reasons. So there isn't a Black Lives Matter representative that has kind of carried the torch.
That we've decided as a community that we listen to, right?
That said, I don't know if it's necessary right now.
That's fair.
Because, you know, you can hear a lot of interesting voices. And in the same way that you, like for Bernie, for example, right? It's like Bernie was about an idea. And, you know, I loved Bernie's politics. And when Bernie faded, his campaign was ended, I was bummed because he represented the best opportunity for those politics to make their way into the White House. So, but when he speaks now, I'm like, oh, that was good. I wish he was president. But he's not the leader of the left because he's no longer carrying those towards the White House. So I think that's okay. And it's a bummer that we don't have that person now. But now there's other voices. There's other people who speak and kind of differentiate themselves with their thoughts. And I feel like I've read great op-eds lately. I've read really good opinion pieces. I've heard good speeches. I don't know that there needs to be a singular person, especially because, as we were saying before, people's vision about what we're doing here differs.
I know, like if you ask somebody what are the riots about, you're going to get multiple answers. Can the leader be Steven Jackson? Can we just say it's Jax?
I'm saying Steven Jackson is a leader. Killer Mike is a leader. Jamie Foxx is a leader. You know, they are leaders. They may
Chris
not
Rock.
be. They may not be. Yeah, they may not be singular. We may not take our cues overall.
Yeah.
And when I say we, I'm talking about people who are in agreement with the protesters, people who side politically with the aforementioned guys, not necessarily of like, this is a black leader for black people. I don't know who is going to lead who, but I'm also saying I don't know that we need like one person to be our sort of figurehead for wherever you fall, you know, under this umbrella.
Yeah, I'm not looking for like a singular tip of the spear kind of person, but the advantage that Trump's movement has is Trump. And there has been op-eds debating on, is Trumpism actually about this person? And the answer is maybe, but probably not. And I think I'm not looking for an equal and opposite person to counter Trump here, but I'm looking for a way to discuss this thing. I'm looking for a unifying thing. I always ask, what do people want? You know, someone is causing a scene in a bar. I always want to ask them, well, like, what do you want here? What is your goal here? You know, what is your political goal? What do rioters want? If it's even just self-expression, that's enough for me. But I want some sort of, this is, I think, a major, major event in American history, what's happening this week. And I want to be able to discuss it in complicated, nuanced terms. Of course, this is a blunt object, right? This might be Giannis Antetokounmpo. People want this blunt thing to occur, this action to occur. But then afterwards, I think it's important to pick up the pieces if we want to counter someone like Trump in order to unify, because while I want desperately Joe Biden to beat Donald Trump, I don't think he has the cognitive strength for that right now.
Well, I of course agree with that. I'm trying to differentiate between, say, the upcoming election and what we're seeing today. Mm-hmm. yes, it would be great if Bernie was going to be the candidate because Bernie represents our thoughts on this side and he can verbalize them and discuss them in a way that is intelligent and compassionate, and he's not running for president. And Joe Biden can't really do that.
Yeah, and this is not a Bernie Biden debate. Yeah,
I know you're trying to desperately avoid that, but I get that.
Yeah.
But the problem is that like Jamie Foxx could be an incredible voice.
I'd be down. Yeah, I'd be into it.
I saw his speech along next to Stephen Jackson and Carl Anthony Towns, who's going through it, and I really respect him. And Jamie Foxx was fantastic, but he's not running for president. Like
Right.
AOC, Ilhan, there have been people saying what we want to hear. People who have been doing what you said, verbalizing this and explaining this in the terms that it should be discussed.
Yeah.
But again, they're not running for president.
Yeah. And I don't think what I'm proposing exists anymore, because I think of in a bubble, I think of the way we're turning against Sean King. Like the community is really turning on him, and he's somebody who has millions of followers. And I think of the way the NBA community reacted to Michael Porter Jr.'s tweets, and not that he's built to be a kind of leader that I'm talking about, but when he came out with his tweets and said what he said, and to paraphrase him, he was like, listen, man, I'm praying for those cops because it's clear that everyone needs help, and I hope like God kind of comes in and helps them, and I have them in my thoughts. To me, that was kind of a religious prayer and kind of like a wonderful way to view life, but it was fraught with complications because we were very angry at these people in the moment, and we will be forever. And people came after him like, this ain't it, boss, and like, delete your account, and all these catchphrases, but no one would engage him in a discussion. And that's not the way Twitter works anymore. It's just like, not it, unfollow, and all these ways to just disagree without having a discussion, because I believe what he said was just a prayer. He was praying, right?
Yes. I don't have any problem with what he said because it feels very much in the vein of what people have always said. When a black church was shot up, people said, oh, we're praying for the guy who did this. Mm-hmm. It's very much something that comes out of a religious background.
Right.
And whether or not it's, like genuine in how you feel, it's almost a way of saying God will look over us. Totally.
This is an understood American idea, right?
That's what I mean. Is like he's like, I'm praying for everybody. It's just like. But I understood.
It's a Kanye West lyric. Yeah.
Yeah, but I understood why it.
Oh yeah.
Garnered the response that it did, because it's like, bro, we don't need to hear that you're praying for the cops who just sat on a guy and kneed him in the throat until he died on camera. Like, we don't need to hear that you're praying for that guy. Like,
but why don't we?
Because who cares about that guy and who needs to pray for him? But I'm acknowledging that what he said was not atypical at all from the religious idea of like praying for your enemies.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't find it controversial. I didn't look at it and be like, delete your account, boss.
Yeah.
That's not it. Sorry, chief. I'm just like, oh, it's not how I would express it.
Yeah.
But it does fall under the category of like
read the room kind of stuff.
The
right?
the very boring religious way of saying God overlooks us and I'm praying for my enemies. Like, it was actually very
innocuous
in a lame way.
Yeah, I mean, and Michael Porter Jr. is not someone I was expecting to hear a response from, but like, and then people went after his economic background, his racial background, and I'm like, this is super weird to me, but not weird, right? And at least two people texted me that tweet looking to be like, look at this clown, and I'm like, I don't know how to talk about this, but like, I think he knows the risk of tweeting that, but this is a very kind of decent religious way to talk about this, I thought.
Yeah, and I also don't care at all about him getting blowback, whatever. You know, like
True.
I just don't care. If people dislike him because of him tweeting that, well, so who cares? It's just not an issue to me. Like,
Yeah.
you know, I think we're just so beyond like people's feelings
But
and things like this.
I brought him up not as, that's why I say it was in a bubble, but the way we react to this is why we won't get a leader, because it's easy just to be like, this ain't it, Chris Rock, this ain't it, Common, and it just to not work. Somehow the MAGA people have figured out not to do that, maybe because they have the person in power, and I don't know, it's easier to dictate behavior when you are the one holding the crown or whatever, you know. And I just don't think technology doesn't let this happen easily anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it's just hard to say, because what movement are we actually talking about here? Are we
This is the
talking
confusion,
about,
right?
Are we
There's
talking
3 or
about
4.
the left? You know, because the left had its leader up until a month ago. You know, everyone was kind of behind Bernie on the left because he was the one running for office. It wasn't everyone's like, Bernie, it's that singular man, it's that Bernie Sanders. He just represented the opportunity for those political platforms to reach the White House.
But not to get into a Bernie debate, but he wasn't voted for, so he did not have the support.
I'm saying from the left. I'm not talking about from centrists. The
Okay,
left,
I don't want to get. Yeah, this is.
But I'm saying the left
yeah.
was 100% behind Bernie. The left, not moderates, not centrists. The left had someone. You know, and I'm not saying it was every single person on the left voted for Bernie, but generally speaking, there was a person who spoke for the left.
Yeah,
And he is no longer running for president. So there is a vacuum there. But we also have, like, are we talking about Black Lives Matter? Are we talking about Antifa? Antifa by design doesn't have a leader. That's their thing.
Anarchists by design don't have a leader, so it muddies the whole riot thing, and it is confusing what we're watching, because while I think, of course, this is an expression that has a reason, there's a reason for this kind of expression that has been bubbling, but a lot of the things that we're capturing on Twitter, on our cameras, technologically easy for us, is expressions of all these different micro factions that you're talking about.
See, I also think it is really simple. I think there are complexities within it, specifically, as we're saying, them being leaderless, different groups with different agendas. But the idea here is really simple. It's no justice, no peace. I know that sounds like a cliche, that's what people chant, but that's actually what it means.
Yeah, talk about it.
That's all it means.
Go.
Until things change, until there's justice, there's going to be chaos. Things are going to happen. Things are going to break. Things are going to burn. There's going to be problems. That's all it means. Everyone wants it to be like, yeah, but they're targeting the wrong person, and they should do this, and maybe if they went to this neighborhood. No. That's not what this is about. It's not a PowerPoint. It's no justice, no peace. You're going to have chaos in the streets and civil unrest until things change. That's all it is. And it doesn't necessarily mean there is a unified agenda on what all of those things are. There's not a checklist. But
Right.
It does mean that idea.
Because we get bonobos with torches, and that's like no justice, no peace for them, right?
I don't even know. But they were... No, because that was unite the right. You know, like that was... I don't even know what they were pretending to do. That was just white supremacist shit. But it wasn't about justice and peace. But maybe it was in their view.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's very confusing. That's where I feel like we're watching. I was thinking about that Australian TV show called The Slap that they did for America too, and it was about like a backyard party, upper middle class, and someone not related to a kid slaps him, and there was this action the word slap is funny, but it was a really complicated show, and I thought it was interesting because this action was in a vacuum, and it was a simple action. But then the whole show, which was a hit show in Australia but didn't really do it in America, was the unfolding and what led to that and what did it uncover and what kind of things were people thinking that wouldn't have come out with this slap within their social circle. And that was a microcosm of whatever. And I think about that in current events and politics all the time. This feels like a blunt object, but like this riot. But I don't think it's simple personally. I think it's full of, like, we could just do a podcast about civil unrest endlessly and not get to any conclusion. Because, right, like, what do we want? What is the result of this? I am not sure if there's a clear answer that would satisfy 51% of the people.
I don't think it needs to be clear cut. But again, this is not it is a very simple sort of ransom. No justice, no peace. You want to have cops killing people in broad day and not charged with crimes? No justice, no peace. You want to have cops run into someone's house and murder someone? No justice, no peace.
So let me ask you, and I'm with you, and let me just ask you, is throwing all 4 of these police officers enough justice?
No, of course not. But they are tips of the iceberg. They are representative.
What will be enough justice that satisfies 51% of our population?
Well, there's
hypothetically,
again,
I don't know.
But there isn't that. But that's not even like the discussion, right? I just mean I can't come up with something. There is no one thing. It's that things need to change.
Is injustice part of our human experience?
I don't think it has to be.
But is it?
Well, I think there are certain amounts of injustice that are going to be present in any society. I think America's injustice is flagrant and, top 10. Like it's up there. Like
I'm with you.
America's really, really unjust, exceptionally unjust, especially considering how much money we have. The amount of wealth in America compared to the amount of justice is just egregious. And that's what this is about. And this may be spurred by police brutality, but it's also about general injustice. It's about poverty and employment and education. It's all about these things. But there was a flashpoint, and it was a police officer murdering someone on camera with absolutely no regard for the man's life. And now we're seeing hit the bullshit charges that they gave him, and the coroner throwing garbage out there, being like, oh, well, yeah, he had an underlying condition.
He died of diabetes, man. Get that straight, officially.
Dude had his knee on his neck for like 2 minutes after he stopped breathing and moving.
Was it?
But that's what I'm saying is like, these are going to happen. It will be quelled. People will chill out. And there need to be changes. If police are still being brutal, this will happen again. That's what I mean by no justice, no peace. It's like, this will keep happening as long as cops keep killing people and being unaccountable. And as long as cops keep harassing and brutalizing and terrorizing black communities in America, this will continue to happen. Cops have to stop doing that. And in order for them to stop doing that, there needs to be changes within cities, within the budgets, et cetera. Like, they need to be changed all over the place because cops are not going to change themselves. Yeah. Cops work for themselves. They do not work for people.
Yeah. I have a weird take where I want the budget for cops to go up and to be all of it spent on like therapy and like more training and hire a fleet of therapists and psychiatrists, because cops will be cops. It's a gang, right? And no one wants out of that gang and no one wants to interrupt that. And I think putting in money to be like, we're going to take you off the streets until you complete 1,000 hours of like sensitivity training. It's just like, because I think defunding them is like moot to me. I think it's a cultural thing that takes money.
My thing is that we should have a fraction of the amount of cops. They just should not exist. That's what defunding is about. We shouldn't have cops. Like, we don't need to have a standing army in New York City of cops. It's unnecessary. We don't need it. That's my thing about defunding. It's like, Let's make them disappear. The less cops, the better. And of course, there could be totally a tipping point where we say, okay, now we need a few more.
Right.
But at this point, we don't. We do not need more cops. We need far, far fewer. And that's what I mean by defunding. It's not about saying make their salaries less. It's about saying instead of having 100,000 cops or whatever, let's have 20,000 cops.
How come all these dudes at Zuccotti Park are buff dudes with backwards Yankees caps and bonobros?
That crowd waiting at Barclays, you just looked at that. It was hundreds of cops in riot gear. Get out of here. You get two cops.
Yo, New York City people are huge and buff all of a sudden. Weird. Everyone's hitting that gym.
Oh wow, they're on that pasta diet during quarantine, just doing body weight exercises,
Building mass.
just ordering Yankees fitteds online.
Yeah. Oh man, it's so a white armband is a new style. I'm in, man. Everyone should just start wearing white armbands.
Instead of earbuds, we're just using these wires that go under our shirt.
Yo, Google Glass is so bummed at earbuds. Like, why couldn't we make that? How come we can make that work and not Google Glass? Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I don't have an answer for this, and it's like, this is an articulation of. I keep on saying that word. We went through 3 months of something very specific, and I always argue with mention my idea to my friends who are in an argument, like, oh, I got kicked out of my house and all I said was this, and I'm like, well, what'd you say before that? It was probably something you said a month ago, and then you said something, and then they got really mad and kicked you out. It's like, how come this person broke up with me? It's like, oh, it's not what you did that night, it's what you did for a year, right? Because people have the capacity to forgive to various degrees, and we've run out of that juice clearly as a society, whether that be about this feeling powerless with this virus. Like, I just want to throw a brick through a window because I've been sitting at home like a sitting duck.
Yes. And I also think a huge part of this is the lack of accountability.
Mm-hmm.
When you can have a politician who's gifted her position in the U.S. government because her husband runs the stock market, within, a month of taking office, starts doing insider trading to profiteer off of the pandemic, and then that person doesn't get charged with a crime, nothing happens to them. Like, there's no accountability.
Yeah.
Like what we're seeing throughout the entire government. People who did terrible things, people who were corrupt, people who were crooks, people who were inept, no one paid for anything. Everyone walks free.
They tried to take down Abacus Bank in Chinatown on Bowery Street.
No
That
accountability.
was the one bank. Yeah.
No accountability to all the financial institutions that screwed America, that plunged us into a recession. No accountability. Cops kill people. No accountability. They always get off. Always. The only cop who actually got like a serious sentence was a black cop who killed a white woman.
Right.
That was the only one.
Yeah.
There's
And
just no accountability. And that's what this comes down to, right? That's what the anger is.
Well, I saw a really great take on Twitter, and it made me think of the NBA. They were like, if we really want to talk about looting, we should talk about like the $200+ billion that the billionaires got to save on taxes in the last 2 months. Like, that is true looting because that money pays for like the graduating class of 2020. Like, give everyone $10,000 because they're not getting hired. Like, and you're taking money out of our society. Like, what? Okay, you take a flat screen TV from Target. So it made me think of the NBA because sometimes we get on players like, oh, Bradley Beal makes too much money. John Wall, he's just like stealing from us. My tickets cost $150. Boo, John Wall, get on the court. And I'm like, no. Look at the front office. That's where the money is going. Just look directly at the front office. They're like, no, it's John Wall. And I'm like, oh, it's the ownership, right? It's always like they have enough money for everything. We shouldn't ask Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons to pay for stadium arena workers. And this happened recently. There's a baseball player, no sin bin, on the Dodgers, David Price, who is going to give out $1,000 to every minor league player every month during this pandemic in the Dodgers organization. Why should he have to do that? We're applauding him because it's an awesome move, but like the ownership should just do that. So, we're trying to prosecute all these cops and all these people throwing bricks through windows. We have to look up more. Look up at the penthouses, right?
I think that's true. If you look at America and see how screwed up it is, it's easy to throw your hands up and say, "Ugh, this is how do you ever fix this? How do you change this? This is so fundamentally screwed up. This is so entrenched. This is so deeply rooted in American culture and American government and American economics. Where do you start?"
Yeah.
And sometimes when you have a lot of problems in your life, a lot of stuff going on, they get intertwined. And I think it's important to separate things and try to figure out what problems there are and where are your solutions. And it's not just an amorphous glob of problems. You're like, wait, okay, I'm stressed about rent. Don't like what's happening at my job. I'm unhappy there. Should I be with this person in a relationship? I just mean, once you start untangling things and realizing, oh, actually, I'm just stressed about that. That's no big deal. That I actually don't care about. Now let me focus on other things.
I love this. Listen to you and Michael Jordan living in the present. I am into this, man. Crushing it.
But my point is, if we look at America, instead of saying it's just this den of snakes, and we start saying, well, what do we have to change? We need healthcare. That's a big one. And that's why it was so galvanizing, because it was clear, it was distinct, it was obvious.
I'm very into that.
That made sense. Let's separate things. What's something that causes misery in this country? The healthcare system. Let's change that. And you look and say, okay, we need to take corporations out of politics. We need to change these laws that allow super PACs. That's a thing. That has to stop. And it's going to be a fight, and you're going to have those interests on one side and people on the other. But you can start diagnosing where America went wrong.
Yeah, right, exactly. There's no curing cancer, but you can treat cancer. And I think we should start. Just start. And it's frustrating because we took many steps back with this president and this White House, and this is the frustration, right? I think 1 out of 2 people who we see looting would be able to discuss that. And
well, I got a question for you here. Sorry to cut you off. I want your answer on this, because
do your thing.
A lot of people are like, the last week has been terrible. It's bad. This is so bad. Do you feel that way?
I talk about living in the present. I feel badly for people. I feel awful for the man who was killed. I think that's the ultimate. As soon as all politics are done, when you're dead, and I think no one should be stripped of life. I think this is as interesting as it is tragic. The riot part of it.
You find the riots tragic?
I don't like to see my country burning. I don't like it, and it's for a lot of reasons. I don't like to see corruption at the highest level. I don't like to see people getting hurt. I don't like to see a gang like the cops enacting, flexing. I don't like it. I know it sometimes is inevitable. I don't think this was avoidable at all. It does make me sad. It's more than melancholy. I don't like to see people suffering.
I am with you on the part about George Floyd. That is horrifying, and
there's no coming back from that.
Of course not. It's death. It's forever.
Yeah.
At the same time, I view the response to his death by communities, not only where he was killed, but other communities that have had similar situations where black people have been killed by the cops. The response from those communities and the uprising and the civil unrest has made me more optimistic about the country than I've been in years.
That's fair.
To see people unafraid of state-sponsored violence from the police, standing their ground and driving off invading forces.
Yeah.
Because let's be clear, cops don't live in those neighborhoods. They don't. Minnesota's has one of the lowest
totally.
percentages of white cops who live in
Obviously,
the city
yeah.
borders.
Cops don't live in black neighborhoods for sure.
No. And to see cops fleeing a precinct and it going up in flames, that to me was absolutely beautiful. Beautiful.
I mean,
and I don't even mean that as like a crazy militant. That was beautiful. Like that to see aggressors in a neighborhood who have killed someone without retribution and inflicted terror on a community for generations turning tail. That was a victory of the people. When the fireworks went off, I damn near got misty, bro.
Yeah, there's a romance to revolution as long as it's your revolution. And I think this is mostly
I'm
our
not advocating
revolution.
for violence. I'm saying
Yeah.
a police precinct burning, good. No one got hurt. No one got killed. No one got hurt. You know, it's a building.
Now they're just going to build a nicer one. They're like, yes. I wonder how many people like, can we burn down our building so we get that insurance money?
I mean, who's saying the cops didn't burn it down?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, I hear you.
But it was symbolic. The police car burning yesterday in Fort Greene. That was a great symbolic moment to me of people refusing to be smashed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what I mean. I find this, is it scary? Sure. Is it upsetting to people? Yes, naturally it is. It's unrest. But to me, it's also something that had to happen. We have to have a correction. We can't, this wasn't going, to your point before, this wasn't going to happen a different way. And we'll see how this plays out. Maybe we'll come back with a far more vicious, well-funded police force in New York City and Minnesota. I wouldn't doubt it.
I mean, there's people on the internet who are saying our cookies accelerationist thing, right? All these places burning down are going to be rebuilt nicer and price everyone out. And I believe Killer Mike even talked about that. But I cannot make clear enough how formative Tiananmen Square was for me as a human. And that's what I mean by sadness, because I've seen that hope get squashed so fast where I do believe in revolution, and I think
we have Joe Biden.
He's not.
Get behind Joe Biden. Come on, this guy. He's the chosen one.
Yo, if you're not gonna let young like LaMelo Ball play in the NBA, then we should not let Vince Carter play in the NBA. You know, like. Yo, Joe Biden, he has done his thing, whatever. He should not be able to be president because he might not have... I saw him get interviewed on Don Lemon, with Don Lemon on CNN. And, yo, respect to our elders, and he has knowledge that I won't have in my life. But he also is at the point where he should be chilling with Jimmy Butler in Florida. He's not cognitively sharp anymore, you know?
I think Hubie Brown's a good announcer.
Yes, right.
I wouldn't necessarily put him in charge of the Grizzlies today.
I wouldn't put him in charge of a pizza party. Like, I will get him the pie of his choice and get him the best seat, but you cannot order the pizzas, man, because no one's going to eat.
Would you even go to a Hubie Brown pizza party? I guess I would go.
Of course I would go, but I would make sure to have pizza before I went. Or a snack. In his honor or one at his house. You know what I mean? Like if Hubie was like, yo, I'm having a pizza party at my house, come through.
I feel like he could... I know he'd bungle the orders.
1,000%. He's like, oh, I ordered personal pies, 10 personal pies.
Yeah, well, they had a deal where you get like 2 mediums if you order like 2 other mediums, and I just got them all plain. You're like, dude, come on. That's such a Hubie Brown thing to do. Now, I know you're smart. I respect you. You're a great coach. But like, I knew you would bungle this. I knew you would not figure out how to feed 30 people at the Hubie Brown pizza party.
Guys, I got all the delicious best pizza, but you're going to have to eat one at a time over a sink. That's just my house, my rules. I'm Hubie Brown.
But you know the disappointing thing when you go to a pizza party and the pies are stacked up and you start going through them, you're like, oh, they fucked this order up. There's only one pepperoni and then there's like 3 sausage broccolis. Come on, like who did that?
Dude.
Why is there so much plain?
Yeah, maybe I'm not giving Donald Trump enough credit because ordering pizza is kind of a little bit challenging.
I don't think Donald Trump could order a
No.
bunch of pizzas.
No, no.
Look at when he had all that fast food that was sitting there for the college team. So it was a debacle. They all came in there and just stared at like chicken tenders and sort of like left.
He is a very basic person, man. I don't know how to describe. There's no B capital enough to describe how basic he is. But I don't know. Biden's not the one for me, man. And I will probably vote for him because I'm threatened by Donald Trump in many ways, but I don't think he should be president at all. And
What would it take for you to become a Biden stan?
like to be psyched on Biden?
Like that you would, attack anyone who criticized Biden online. Like you were in part of like Biden, like a Biden boy.
What would it take to be a
Biden
Biden boy?
A Biden bonono bro.
It would take some clear and concise speaking and thought. And respect. Respect to Hubie Brown, man. If we got to eat over the sink, we got to eat over the sink. But I want to hear some magic from him. I want to hear some abstract thinking expressed in a concise way. I want to see solutions. Until then, I won't be a Biden boy.
Well said. And when you want those kind of solutions, you come to Cookies Hoops. By the way, shout out to Kat Marnell, Cookies correspondent, who shouted us out in the New York Post today.
No, did Kat do that?
She did.
Royalty, man. What'd she say?
She said she's been doing some Cookies correspondent work, and likewise, she's going to be on the show very soon.
Guys, we're going to have some guests, and we're excited for you to sign up for our Patreon subscription, and we'll be giving you guys awesome guests from our Cookies universe.
That's right. Stay safe out there, people.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for bringing that up. We care about you guys. Stay safe.
Cookies.
Cookies.